faith stories,
My now wife Chelsea was like, "Hey, you're coming to church with me on Sunday," and I was like, "All right, I've been looking at the Bible. Let's do this."
fishing memories.
When I first started, I was just fish, focus on the fish. And I see the kid catch a fish, I'm like, good job, perfect, awesome. And then he goes up there and I'm like, we're catching slot snook. And this kid's up here going, oh, the breeze. I'm like, this is exactly what it's about.
Meaningful conversations.
You have to stay in the Word. You have to have a good support system. You have to know what the end goal is. You have to know who God is.
Positivity. This is the Faith and Fishing Podcast. Your hosts, Cam Steele.
If your identity is you're an angler, whenever you're not doing well in the water, that's whenever you can't be content.
And Robert Randolph.
And his timing is perfect. We might not always agree with it, and we might not always understand it at the moment.
Bring you interviews with some amazing guests from the fishing community and discuss all things to do with fishing and their faith. Welcome to the family.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Faith and Fishing Podcast. I'm Cam.
Hey, and I'm Robert.
And we ended up taking a week off, so we should be well rested, at least as far as the podcast is concerned. I ended up going on a little vacation, and I gave Robert, I think, something like 22 hours of notice that I wasn't going to be able to record last week. So
it was fun. It worked out. Excuse me. We were super busy, and it was a good week for you to be on vacation. And I was just like, you know what, we'll just take a break for a week. So it was good. We got a pretty long stretch without missing a week. So good Easter break, and it was nice. Celebrated Easter and did some family things, and work has been busy, and baseball, softball, the whole 9 yards.
Absolutely. Yeah. You get any fishing done?
Let's see. I did some work pond fishing, and they're right up on the bank, caught some nice ones. But then the rain the last little bit, every 3 or 4 days we've been getting a pretty good rain, so that pond stays pretty blowed out. It just, a lot of water moves through those things, which is good for fishing because you can fish current most of the time, and there's just kind of like spillways that go from pond to pond. But other than the work ponds, no. That's all the fishing I've got to do. Maybe I'll get out this weekend. We'll have to see.
I have to say, man, I am so jealous of the work pond.
It makes for a fun lunch break.
Yeah, for sure. I used to do I go to the little public park pond close to work whenever I got an off the clock lunch break. But I stay on the clock for my lunch break now, which means I can get called out at any time. But it also means that I get off an hour earlier than I would otherwise. So
that's right.
There's pros and cons to it. Yeah, we ended up going down to technically it was Franklinville, North Carolina. We stayed on Lake Ramseur, or Ramseur, however that is pronounced.
Right.
Franklinville is an interesting place. I don't have any intentions of going back. If there's any of our listeners from Franklinville, I'm sorry. I'm sure you're a lovely person, but that's not what I experienced in your town. But we went to the Aviation Museum on Thursday. Henry had a good time there. Did a little bit of hiking, and then Friday we went to the zoo. And if you're going to the Asheboro Zoo, Good Friday is not the day to go to the zoo. We ended up sharing the zoo with at the time that we asked on our way out. they said that they lost official count at almost 13,000 people.
Wow.
So
Crazy.
capacity is 15,000 people. So I'm glad that I wasn't an off-duty fire marshal or something with that information and be like, whoa, I wish you hadn't told me that. I'm gonna have to close down. But yeah, there were times where it did not feel crowded at all. And then there were other times where it was like at lunchtime, we walked through like one of the big common areas with the restaurants and stuff. And it was insanity. Just so many people. We ended up being the first ones in the zoo. And I mean, it ended up being a really fun zoo trip, but it was a lot of stress with that many people.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But so Saturday, we were so exhausted from the zoo that we were like, we're just gonna sit at the little lake house. We'll do a little bit of fishing. We'll do like we promised Henry could watch a movie. We were just gonna sit at the place and relax. And 8 a.m. boom echoes across the lake as a transformer blows.
Oh,
We have no power. And on a well, that also means you don't have water because the well pump goes out. And
nice.
so we're sitting there with a 3-year-old who was promised a movie, a wife that is 7 months pregnant, no water, no power. We're like, you know what? We're going to call it. We're going home early.
Yeah, that's probably a good call, I'd say. Yeah.
On the lake, we were right at the dam, and we had just gotten those real big storms right before we went up, and the water was so muddy there was not going to be any chance of catching a fish. So I ended up getting Henry a new little fishing rod for that trip, because we had one that like he was never going to get the hang of casting it, because I could barely get the hang of casting it because it had no flex to it whatsoever. So I ended up telling him, we're going to go get you a new rod for this vacation. So he was dead set. He wanted a Buzz Lightyear rod. So we go to Bass Pro at the very tail end of the spring classic that they got. They're like wiped out of their kids' rods. They've got like one style that he was just not interested in. So I looked, and just a heads up, y'all, I'm on daddy duty. So if you end up hearing some little stuff, I've got the monitor in here with me. And Robert, I'm going to have you take over because he is awake and he needs me to head over there. So,
all right,
take over, buddy.
All right, sounds good. Well, so while Cam does a little bit of daddy duty, I will kind of fill in. And it's been a couple weeks. There's been a ton of things happening in the fishing world. I don't know. We may get into some of that a little bit later. But it's a good time to, let's see here. We're going to do an ad and then we'll be right back.
Sorry, Mom.
Well, that was fast.
Mom came to the rescue.
Well, I was fixing to run an ad and then introduce our guest.
All right, we can do that. I guess I can finish my story.
Well, no, you can finish if you want. I just I didn't know if we want to get into all the fishing world news, and there's a bunch of stuff because we hadn't done it. We weren't on last week, so right. I don't even know. There's like 2 weeks of stuff to go through and some crazy stuff, but I'm sure that there's a lot of podcast coverage of different things that have gone on, and some suspensions in pro fishing and the kayak world. The Bassmaster finished up. I don't even know if we've gone over that. I can't remember if Drew had won that already.
No.
in the last one. So a lot of stuff. KBF National Championship is going on. There's some local guys that have made the trip to do that at Gunnersville. So,
I mean, I'll let somebody else cover that because I have no clue what's going on in the fishing world right now. I just have not been paying attention to it. I did keep up with the Bassmaster Classic, but that's about the extent of what I know about what's going on in the fishing world right now. But yeah, the real quick, just to finish up that fishing rod story, he was dead set on a Buzz Lightyear rod, and couldn't find one there. Looked online at Walmart. Everywhere I looked, couldn't find Buzz Lightyear rods to save my life. So I looked online at Walmart. I was like, buddy, they got Spider-Man rods at Walmart. You want to go get a Spider-Man rod? He was like, I can do a Spider-Man rod. So we go, and there is a Hot Wheels rod. And it was on clearance, and it came with a little Hot Wheels car, and he was enamored with it. Boom, we got one. So I ended up taking him out Monday for a little bit, and he caught his first fish on that rod. So nice little green sunfish. But yeah, it was that's about all the fishing that I've gotten a chance to do. So yeah, let's go ahead and run that ad, man, and then let's get this thing going.
Get Outdoors Pedal and Paddle is one of the largest canoe, kayak, and cycling retailers in the Southeast, with a huge selection of kayaks, canoes, bikes, and all the accessories needed to experience paddling and cycling comfortably and safely. Get Outdoors helps to expand and educate the paddling community through their free demos held on local lakes in the Greensboro, North Carolina area, and through in-store clinics and on the water courses and demos, and will even get your new boat rigged up for kayak fishing for you. Stop by the shop in Greensboro, North Carolina, or visit them online at shopgetoutdoors.com to be wowed by their selection.
All right, so real quick, just a reminder that we are having that live show at the time that this comes out. That is going to be next week. So a week from the day that this comes out, April 17th, we will be going live 9 p.m. Eastern to celebrate the podcast's 4th birthday. So we'll have some fun guests, have some giveaways. Make sure you tune into that. So yeah. So let's go ahead and get this this week's guest introduced. This is actually the first time I think they commented on something on Facebook, and I was like, oh man, that's a really cool that's a really cool little bait company. So we have Eric Winter of Higher Power Baits. And the name caught my eye, the logo caught my eye, and then I started following y'all. So, Eric, brother, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here tonight. And I'll tell you, your trip to the zoo is closely followed by Don't Go on Mother's Day. My wife is a fan of the zoo, and we made that trip once on Mother's Day. It was a once of a lifetime adventure. So,
I hear you. Yeah, we. And Good Friday is not the day to go. All of Wake County schools was off all week, and then parents were out of work. A lot of parents were for Good Friday, so it ended up filling up both parking lots, and it was crazy. But yeah, man. So go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us who Eric Winter is.
All right. Well, once again, thanks for having me on. My name's Eric. I've been married for 30 years to my beautiful bride. And about 9 years ago, we started our little fishing ministry, Higher Power Baits. Kind of a story behind it. I sold a gentleman a reel one day at the store. I managed the Bass Pro Shop in Concord, North Carolina. And I was working the reel counter one day with my guys. It was pretty busy. And I sold a gentleman a reel. And when I finished up, he asked me, he said, "Young man, are you a Christian?" And we hadn't talked anything about God or religion. We talked about fishing. And I said, "Well, yes, sir, I am. But why do you ask?" And he's probably 10 years younger than I am. And he said, "Well, I could just tell by the way you acted that you were a Christian." He goes, "And I'm a pastor. And I'm going to have a wild game dinner at my church in a few weeks. And would you mind to come and speak?" And I said, "Speak about what?" And he said, "Fishing." I said, "Oh, yeah, I can talk about fishing. No problem." So we kind of wrapped things up. I gave him my card and we talked. He said, I'll give you a call this week and we'll work things out. So he called me that week and told me the dates and the times and I could make it all work. And I said, yeah, how long do you want me to talk? He said, about 20, 25 minutes is great. I said, okay, I can do that. He calls me back about a week later. He goes, I don't think I mentioned, but this is a ministry. It's kind of a revival thing. So I'm going to need you to tie in a message with it too. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for that, sir. I said, I can talk fishing all day long, but I may be a little inadequate. He said, no, I said, you'll be fine. Just do it. You'll be great. So I will tell you the next, whatever it was, I think I had a couple of weeks to prepare. I went over this message and I had 6 points to be a better bass fisherman. And then I took those same 6 points and I changed one word in it, 6 points to be a better Christian. And it was about a 25-minute presentation. I'd almost memorized it. I'd done it so many times. And pastor gets up, he introduces me that night, and he makes this very nice, elegant introduction and made me even more nervous. And I went up there on stage. I set my iPad down on the pulpit, and I used a bunch of props. And I never looked at my iPad. I didn't follow anything on my script. 45 minutes later, I finished. And when I looked down, the pastor was looking at me a little funny. And the real speaker, they had a guy coming in after me who was a real speaker. He looked at me kind of funny. I thought, man, I've overstepped my bounds. I've done something I shouldn't have done. And end of the night, everybody's leaving. And the pastor called he and I up front to have a little conversation with us. And the guy who followed me put his arm around me. He goes, brother, how many times have you done that? And I said, that's the first time ever. He goes, oh, no, man, really? How many times have you done it? I said, man, it's really the first time. I said, I was about to throw up the whole time. And he says, well, man, we couldn't tell. He said, I didn't want to follow you. And the pastor said, I think you've got a gift. He goes, you definitely love to fish and you love the Lord. So my challenge is to do something more. Well, long story short, next day we got up and we were visiting a church and the pastor kind of lost me. I was out in somewhere else thinking about the night before, really. And we get out of church and normally my wife and I go out to lunch. And I said, honey, can we go home and have lunch today? And she says, everything okay? I said, yeah, I just need to do something. So we go home and she's downstairs making some chicken salad. And I come up to my jig tying room and I tie a jig. And I'd been making my own jigs for a few years. And I took a Sharpie and I painted a cross on the head of the jig. And I go downstairs and I tell my wife about what had happened the night before. Because I didn't let her go with me that first night because I was so nervous. I didn't want her to be there, which was wrong, I guess. But showed her my idea of the cross and told the pastor to challenge me. And she said, hey, this is awesome, but let's make it even better. She said, you make the crosses. She says, and I'll hand paint a cross on the head of every one so it doesn't wash off. So here we are 9 years later, about 8,000 jigs later. Higher Power Baits is going and growing. And man, we've got states. We've got jigs and we've had them in Canada, South America. I don't know how many states. We're in a lot of states, but just our little Facebook page and just growing by faith and people fishing our jigs and sharing our message. So that's who we are and what we are.
That's awesome. So from a fishing standpoint, let's talk about the jigs.
Yes, sir.
What kind of jigs are you tying? I'm not really a jig guy, so
what? We got to fix that.
Yeah, I love a bladed jig. I'm starting to get there on a swim jig, but a flipping jig, I just haven't figured it out yet. So, but yeah. So what kind of jigs are you making, and what kind of heads, all that good stuff?
All right. So we got several different ones, and it's pretty cool. Like I started out pouring my own, and then it got to where I was doing so many, and just time is because I work I told you I manage the Bass Pro Shop in Concord, so we work a lot of hours. And one of the major jig manufacturers, Pours in the Country, found out what I was doing, and they actually sell to me now. So I'm buying my jigs poured, and they're actually a lot better jig than I was making out of my little do-it pot. And I just have to buy several hundred at a time from them. But we got several different heads. We've got Arky heads, we have Sparky heads, we have football heads, we have rock walkers, we have wood walkers, we have 3/8, half ounce, 3/4, go all the way down to a quarter if somebody wants those. We do swim jigs. We do a variation of a bladed jig. Cool thing about our jigs is we powder coat them all on a fluid bed, and then I bake them. You should lose the jig before you lose the paint on our jigs. They're pretty darn dependable. and then we thread tie everything so you don't have to worry about your pants getting pulled down. They stay up, and they won't rot away in your tackle box. That rubber band won't rot. Cool thing too is we do 7 laps around. 7 is the number of completion in the Bible. I figure if it's good enough for the good Lord, it'll be good enough to tie a jig together. And never had one come loose. I don't use any glue. We do 7 laps around, do a couple half hitches, and snap it off, and good to go. And like I said, about 8,000 jigs later, I've never had somebody tell me one thing comes loose. So,
all right. I have a question. What is a sparky head?
So a sparky head is one that has it's a skipping head. I think I may have one over here somewhere. So I don't know when you get this from the camera. So this is an archy head where your line tie is vertical. Sparky turns the head this way, so it's just a different angle on how you tie your jig head on, how you tie onto the line. Okay. Basically the same, but very similar on the head design, just the line tie is different. Really good for skipping. This is not really good for dragging. If you want a dragging jig, like if you're going between docks or on points, I'd recommend a football head or something like a rock walker head, which is this one here. Good for going through rocks and big bulky stuff. But here on Lake Norman, which is our biggest lake that most of us fish, you've got to skip docks. If you're going to be competitive, if you're going to be in the game, you got to get 10, 12 feet up under those docks. So the Arkies and Sparkies that's about all I throw on my boat. I don't have a 3/8. I don't have a 5/8. I have probably 400 jigs in my boat. They're every one a half-ounce Arkie or Sparky. So.
All right. So let's talk colors.
Okay.
How many colors? How many colors?
You can see here, but I've got over 200 jig tabs here. So there's literally, I don't know what that comes out to, millions of combinations you can do. I'm an orange guy. I like orange in my jig. This time of year, especially in our waters, a lot of our crawdads are a red or an orange. That's why I like the crystal craw crankbaits are so good and the bright red crankbaits. So I like an orange about any time of year. If I'm fishing really clear water, I like a watermelon with a little bit of green or blue hue to it. But most of my jigs in the boat are going to have some sort of green, some sort of orange in it, like this right here. Nice and bright. Get it right there. Like I fish High Rock Lake a lot. I don't know if you guys ever come and fish that lake, but it's pretty dirty. You can use yarn for line. It doesn't matter in that lake. It's pretty dirty water, and I like that orange in there. I'll tell you that I like a jig so much it's what I won my boat on. I like fishing the big bass tournaments. I don't like the 5-fish tournaments. I don't get to pre-fish a lot, so for me, a 1-fish tournament kind of fits my way. I like to fish one fish for a jig, and I won the inaugural Big Bass Bash on High Rock Lake on one of my homemade jigs. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome.
Lake Norman. That's a that's a tough one. I've fished it a couple of times and did okay once, and then the other time not so good. Probably got lucky the time I did okay. But they're getting ready to have a big tournament. This will come out after it, but this weekend I think the Hobie's on Lake Norman Saturday and Sunday. I think that's this weekend. So you're going to have about 100 or so kayaks out there on Norman this weekend. So
that'll be a good one. And then 2 weeks, not this weekend, but next weekend, the Big Bass Tours on Lake Norman, and there'll be 800 anglers in that one. And it's like $1,000 an hour, and then the big fish over 3 days wins a Nitro Z18. So there'll be 800 guys and gals out there slinging at them, trying to find that 1 7-pounder in the lake. So
yeah, they're few and far between now, aren't they?
But I'll tell you, I've been here for 18 years, and when I first started here, if you had an 8-pound, 9-pound bag at Lake Norman, you had a good chance of winning. If you're fishing a 40, 50 boat tournament, you probably get a check with 8 or 9 pounds. Now, if you got 9 pounds, you might as well float those in and beat the crowd at the ramp and go home, because it's taken 15, 17, 21, 22 in February to win. So those spotted bass there's a bunch of 4 and 5 pound spots in there now. It's a lot better fishery. It just doesn't fish to my likings because it's a spinning rod lake. A lot of guys, you go on somebody's boat and you look, and there'll be 4 spinning rods on the front of the boat. And if I've got 4 spinning rods on my boat, I've had a rough day. So they weren't doing what I wanted them to do. So.
That sounds like me. I don't even own 4 spinning rods for bass fishing.
Oh, wow.
I own 3.
I can't say that. I got a few more than that. So, but
Yeah, I've got a few, but it's
I'm a kayak guy, so I don't have a rod locker with all these different rods. But yeah, cool. Well, let's. I wanted to ask, what got you started into fishing, and what drew you to the jig?
so I grew up in East Tennessee on a farm, and kind of a split family. So my grandparents basically raised me, and wasn't a lot to do on the farm when you weren't working. So I learned how to fish, and there wasn't a neighbor's pond or neighbor's creek that was off limits to me. I kind of, if I wasn't invited, I snuck in, and caught everybody's fish, and just got addicted to fishing. I loved being alone out there, just me and the fish, and the good Lord, I guess. It was just a blessing. And then as I grew up and got a little older, I started my first career. I worked at Walmart. And one of my best friends who worked underneath me, he was a big bass fisherman, and he and I started bass fishing together, fished a few tournaments, and then I was just hooked, man, line and sinker. And then for years, I never fished a jig. I mean, I didn't own a jig for years and years. And since I took the job at Bass Pro Shop, my wife one winter bought me a jig mold and a pot. And she wanted me to get off the couch and quit watching fishing videos in the wintertime and do something. So she said, "Here's a hobby for you. Make some baits." And she didn't know much about. She didn't know what she bought me, but started making my own jigs and started fishing them. And then just, I'd rather fish a jig. That and a little top water is about my top 2 things. If you gave me a choice.
Yeah. Well, I had some questions. Like, I didn't know that the boats did a big bass kind of like power hour. So just the kayaks do something similar, and maybe they got that from the boat and just molded it over to the kayaks. But the kayak side does a big bass power hour. They go around the country. I think now it's up to like maybe 6 or 7 or 8 stops, and they'll do the same thing. It's $1,000 an hour and it's a 1 day. And then the same thing, the biggest bass is you get a kayak, and then I think as long as you catch something over 14 inches, they draw one out at random for another kayak, and there's one more. I don't remember maybe it's the most inches caught. It's a cumulative deal too. So they do the biggest bass, they do the biggest bass per hour, and then the most inches caught. But you said the boat one is a 3-day deal. So is that like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There's 7 hours each day you can weigh and fish, and pays $1,000 at first, all the way down to $100 for 10th place every hour. So you got 21 hours. You could hypothetically win $1,000, and then over the 3 days, the largest one catch it wins a Nitro Z18.
Interesting.
And they do those all over the country. They do them. I think there's 16 of them this year. There's one on Lake Norman. They go to Douglas in Tennessee. They go to Lake Murray after Lake Norman. They're at Table Rock Lake this weekend. So kind of wherever you are in the country, this thing comes around. It is sponsored by Bass Pro and several other folks in the fishing industry. But it's a well-run deal. They've been doing it for, 13 or 14 years now.
Okay. And, so that sounds like they did that off of the boat side. So that's cool. And you said you were from East Tennessee. Where at in East Tennessee?
A little town called Newport, Tennessee, near Douglas Lake and Cherokee.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. I went to school at Cookeville, Tennessee Tech. And so
I went to East Tennessee State. So,
okay. Yeah.
I still got a farm there in Parrotsville, Tennessee, about 15 miles east of Newport. So
awesome.
Yeah, man. What brought you to North Carolina?
Bass Pro Shop did. I was running a Walmart super center in Morristown, Tennessee, right on the lake. I live right off the lake there on Cherokee. And pretty cool story. I actually met Johnny Morris, the owner of Bass Pro Shop, at the Sevierville store during grand opening that day. And I was there with my wife and kids, and I told my wife, I said, that's Johnny Morris. I'm going to go say hi. She said, "Who's that?" And I said, "He owns Bass Pro Shop." She said, "Which one?" I said, "Heck, all of them." I said, "I'm going to go say hi." So I tapped him on the shoulder, and he was holding the door open for grand opening. It was that morning, and I said, Mr. Morse, do you have a moment? He said, I sure do. And he turned around and introduced myself and told him my name was Eric, and I ran the Walmart up the street from him. And that I had just moved from Arkansas, and I'd gone to the Springfield store. Like, I called it my pilgrimage every year. I'd go down there with my Bastrop catalog and spend way too much money. And we started laughing. I told him, I said, listen, I run the Walmart up the street from you. And I said, you're going to beat me at selection, but I'm going to whip your butt at pricing. And he started laughing. And we talked about, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes. And he turned to my son. My son was there with me. He said, young man, what do you think about your dad running one of these? And my son said, well, Mama calls it Daddy's Disney World. Long story short, he got my name and number that morning. I got a phone call 5 days later. They flew 2 people up to interview me in East Tennessee 2 different times. And I had a pretty small window where I was willing to go because the store I was running was real close to my family's farm. And I'd moved all over with Walmart for years in Arkansas and Virginia and different places. And about 2 months later, a Charlotte store came open. They called me. I flew up on Easter Sunday, interviewed all day the day after, and quit my job on a handshake and never looked back. So 18 years with Walmart. I'll be hitting 18 years with Bass Pro Shop in about 30 days. So
That's awesome.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, let's dive into your faith too, man.
Okay.
So kind of give us your faith story. What is it you believe in, and how'd you come to believe that?
I grew up in church. My mom left when I was 9 years old. My mom chose a different path and we moved to Tennessee with my grandparents, and my grandparents made sure I went to church every Sunday. But that's really all I did. I just went to church. I didn't do much else. And then as I went into college, I kind of steered away, made a lot of bad choices. And then, met my wife. Of course, she wasn't my wife when I first met her. She was just this cute little girl working at the Walmart. And she grew up in a Baptist church, and I grew up in a Lutheran church. She grew up in a Free Will Baptist, very conservative. I grew up with no limitations, basically. I don't think I ever had a curfew. She had to be in by 10 o'clock. She didn't drink. I was living a life I shouldn't have, and Lord put her in my life for a reason. I started dating her, and she said, hey, you got to make a choice. What do you want to do? And so I quit doing all the things I shouldn't have been doing, got back in church, and then as a Lutheran, you get baptized as a child. You get sprinkled. But I had never accepted Christ. And when my son was about to be born, he was a very difficult pregnancy, and my wife was having trouble. Sorry. So about 5 minutes before we went back to have an emergency surgery, I stepped outside the hospital room there. I got right with God. And I've never looked back, but it took several years. I didn't get baptized until my daughter was born. And my daughter was, 7 or 8, and we actually got baptized the same day together. So,
Wow.
And life has been a lot better since then.
For sure. That's awesome.
Miss allergies are terrible today.
Yeah.
It's pollen season.
It's pollen season, yeah.
Oh, man.
So, and then, I grow every day. I take steps backwards. I try to take steps forward, and that's where our ministry has really been it's been good for me because it helps keep me grounded, and it keeps me steered in the right direction. And my wife does a good job of steering me too. I mean, she helps keep me balanced and humble. She uses that word with me a lot, humble. So she's the godsend for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Robert, you keep going to your microphone like you're going to say something. So I'm like,
no, it's just, the retail business. I worked in the restaurant business for about 17 or 18 years. So the whole service industry, restaurants, retail. I mean, I got a million questions about Bass Pro and what it takes to run a Bass Pro, but I don't know if we want to get that sideways or not. That's why I haven't asked that. But
I was in retail for 15 years, so I'm right there with you.
So
I can tell you it's a lot more fun than running a Walmart. I can tell you that.
I can imagine. I can imagine that it is.
I get to go to work every day and talk to people about hunting and fishing and hiking and camping. And the cool thing is, like at Walmart, I had a lot of great outfitters. I mean, they were associates. I had a lot of great associates worked in my stores. But in my store at Bass Pro Shop, everybody has a passion for what they do. My folks at the hunting counter, they shoot. They hunt or they shoot. My folks in fishing, they're catfish fishermen, they're bass fishermen, they're saltwater fishermen. They do what they do. I've got, I think, 5 Eagle Scouts work in my store, so they've hiked and camped everywhere. So the knowledge and the passion for the outdoors is just so unique in what we do.
Yeah, that was my biggest question is staffing wise, because everywhere you turn now, it's so hard to staff places. And, I just didn't know how a huge name like Bass Pro Shops, is that a good draw? You know what I'm saying? Like you guys, I'm sure you still struggle at times with staffing, but, being like, that's a cool job. Like you said, working the gun counter or working in, the fishing or selling boats or whatever. Like, is that a pretty good draw? How hard is it? Is it still hard to staff and kind of go into that a little bit?
It is. I mean, staffing, I think just in general in today's world is changed in the 30 some years I've been in retail. I mean, I don't want to say the work ethic, but the work ethic is different. It is. And, people, you want me to come to work on a Friday night? Well, yeah, I need you to be here on Friday night, and, but overall, it's a lot easier to staff than it was at a Walmart because we've got the passionate folks. And then, so one of the benefits we have is the employee discount at Bass Pro Shop. If you're an outdoors person, it is pretty darn good. So it gets a lot of people on board, and we have a lot of people work a full-time job somewhere else, and they work with us part-time one, because they love what they're doing, want a little extra money, but the discount is very lucrative to folks. But it's pretty neat when you sit down. Like today, I had 3 interviews today, and every single person I talked to told me a hunting story or a fishing story. Their biggest fish, they pulled their phone out and showed me their big fish or the buck they just shot. At Walmart, nobody ever walked up to me and said, "Man, I'd love to fry chicken for you. I'd love to work in the deli and slice meat all day." At Bass Pro Shop, it's every day. People are like, "Man, I wish I worked at the real counter." Well, fill out an application. We can make that happen sometimes. So.
Yeah. And so the other thing that keeps going through my head, so you've said you're coming up on 18 years with them. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So 18 years. And so I'm just, remembering back. So you've seen it change from, Bass Pro 18 years ago, you pretty much, you had to go there to get all your fishing stuff. And now with online shopping and what that's done, tell me, put a little bit of color on how that's changed the brick and mortar side of the retail space. And, how do you guys still draw the people in that you draw in?
Well, I think part of the draw is our building and our folks, the knowledge of our people. You can't find Amazon knowledge, right? People don't know how to tie a Palomar knot on Amazon. They don't have fish swimming in a tank on Amazon. So some of that is just the mystique of what we do. But it has definitely changed because it's so easy to pick up your phone and it's coming to your house, right? You don't have to go fight the traffic on an 85 to get to my store. You don't have to deal with all those issues. But there are still so many people that just love to come in and walk around. And if I'm going to buy a gun, I want to feel the gun. If I'm going to buy a fishing pole, I want to feel what it feels like in my hand. I want to touch it. I want to see the reel. And still a lot of what we do is that way. But, a lot of people are so much more informed today than when they come in. They don't have to ask as much because they're on their phone and they've done the research. They've watched the YouTube videos and the podcasts, and they have a much better knowledge than they had 18 years ago, when I started. So.
Cool. For sure. Yeah, my son loves going to the fishing store. The Bass Pro here in Garner was a Cabela's not that long ago. So it's still got all of the taxidermy and everything. Henry loves going and seeing the taxidermy and seeing the fish tank and all that stuff. And then he always rides around in the cart, and everybody who works there always has a fishing story for him or something. So it's definitely
and that's one of the things that separates us from our competitors. I think we not saying anything bad against a Walmart or Academy or those other folks, but you don't have that environment, and once again, a lot of times you don't have that knowledge. So
well, I'll say the big thing that separates you from Academy is you have left-handed reels in stock.
You're one of those guys, huh?
Yeah, so I was born with joints in my left hand that don't work. So growing up, I didn't use my left hand for anything, and it's very underdeveloped. And my right arm and hand is very overdeveloped. And so, like, walking a dog with my left hand is just out of the question. So I can do it all day long with my right hand, no problem. So my left hand is fine at reeling. So
That's awesome.
I
Because
have
only
left
1 out of 10
hand.
people fish left-handed. I'm left-handed, and I have to use a right-handed reel. But only 1 out of 10 fish left-handed. So some basic trivial knowledge you'll never need to know again, but you know now. So
Yeah, I would have thought it would have been more than that, because I hear so many people that are like, "Oh, I hate switching, I hate casting and then switching hands and stuff." But
Yeah.
okay, I would not have guessed that it was 1 in 10.
and then like 8 or 9 out of 10 reel left-handed with a spinner reel. So it's almost totally inverted the other way.
Right?
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, I never guessed. All right. Well, there's a couple questions that we always ask all of our guests.
Okay.
So first, what fishing story or memory means the most to you?
Fishing story or memory. Probably one of my favorite memories was I got a chance to go to British Columbia, Canada, salmon fishing. And I was on the Skeena River, and I'm not a fly fisherman. I think it's beautiful. I think it's artistic. I'm just not that guy. I've got a fly rod. I can catch them on a fly rod. It's just not my juice. But I got to stand in the stream next to Johnny Morris when he was casting a fly rod, and it was almost like something out of a movie. Just watching the majestic cast of it, and I remember I was just enamored just watching. I wasn't even fishing. I was just watching him fish. He didn't catch anything. He didn't catch a thing in that stream, but just watching how long of a cast and how fluid it was. It's something that when I close my eyes, I can just see it again and again and just appreciate the beauty of what that was. I mean, I've caught big fish. I've caught a lot of fish, but watching somebody else fish that time was probably one of my favorite memories of something outside of fishing with my kids and things like that. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then when you're out on the water, what kind of conversations are you having with your other people in the boat?
I fish a lot by myself. So me and God, it's kind of I like to fish alone. I love to watch the sunrise come up by myself. I love to watch the sunset. And if I get to watch them both from my boat in the same day, I've had a really good day. Don't get a lot of those days where I see both the sunrise and sunset, but man, there's just something about coming up in the water. It's a good me and God time. But when I'm fishing in a boat with somebody, my wife is my tournament partner a lot of times, and we'll do a Bible study sometimes on the water. We'll play some music. She'll fish a little bit, but we just kind of talk about life. We catch up on the week, and then if I'm fishing with one of my buddies from back home in Tennessee, my best friend, he lives in East Tennessee. We do a lot of catching up, and I try to be a positive role model, because some of the guys that I fish with, maybe you don't have that relationship that I guess I shouldn't say that I want them to have, but they don't have the relationship with Christ that I think that they need. So I try to be a positive influence in that role, and that's kind of how our jigs came to bat too, because it's on our jigs we say you need one, you feed one, you seed one. We sell them in packs of 3 for that very reason. You need one for yourself, you feed one to somebody that has a relationship with the Lord, and then you seed one to somebody who doesn't. Because if you're out there in the Lord, you can tell pretty quick where somebody is in their walk. And then I asked myself, did it work? And I'd been doing this for, I don't know, 5 or 6 months, and I fished a BFL as a co-angler, and I drew a young man out who I could tell in the first 5 or 6 minutes that he probably wasn't where he should be in his walk. And at the end of the day, I just tossed a few jigs in his cup holder, left them there on purpose. And he called me at work a few days later, and he said, "Hey, boss man," he said, "you left some jigs in my boat." He said, "I'll bring those back to you next time I'm up at the Bass Pro." And I told him, I said, "Young man," I left those for you. I said, I make my own jigs, and I left those for you. He goes, "Well, thank you. They look great." He goes, "But what's up with this cross on it?" So that's what I told him what it was, what our jig was, and what our little ministry was. And he says, "Yeah," he said, "I don't know God." And I said, "Well, he knows you." I said, I said, "I'm not a pastor, I'm not a preacher, but I can put you with somebody if you got any questions." And I said, "But I can tell you," I said, "if you'll take the time to get to know him," I said, "you'll see a change in your life." Conversation, ended soon after that, and didn't hear anything from him. And about 3 months later, I got a text on a Sunday morning, and it was a picture of a set of church doors, and the text said, "First time ever," and it was him going to church. So that kind of gave me affirmation at that point in time that what we were doing, whether it's one person we ever touch or we touch 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people, that we need to keep doing what we're doing. So
Yeah, for sure.
lead one, feed one, seed one.
That's awesome.
Heck yeah.
All right, man. Well, it is time to jump into what's your favorite. So let's get started.
All right.
It's time for What's Your Favorite, powered by Nakwa Adventure Gear. Power that fits in the palm of your hand.
So, like I said earlier, I'm on daddy duty, and so I've got the monitor in with me, the baby monitor, and of course it died right before we started. So what is charging the monitor right now? It is the power bank from Nakwa Adventure Gear. So even stuff at home, not only on the boat or kayak, but sometimes at home too. You need a little bit of power. So Nakwa.com, go check that out, and email info@nakwa.com. Let Heidi know that Faith and Fishing sent you, and see what kind of great things happen for you. All right, so Eric, let's get things started, man. What is your favorite scripture?
I've got two, really, I guess. First one's probably Proverbs 27:17. It's a very well known, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. I think that as men, as in leaders in our homes, that we need to surround ourselves with people that make us better. I think a lot of times, the world it's got sideways because we don't have people that'll stand up and hold somebody accountable, hold your brother accountable. So Proverbs 27:17 is probably my favorite. My next is probably James 1:6, and it's got a little bit of a history to it with me, but it's but let him ask in faith, never wavering, for he that wavereth is like a wave in the sea. It's driven by the wind and tossed. And this verse was, I first got this verse when I was fishing in a tournament 5 years ago or so. It was one of the big bass tournaments, Big Bass Bash on High Rock, where I won my boat. And I just sold my boat, had one kid in college, one getting ready to go to college. So needed to pay for college, and said, I don't really need a boat right now. I'm going to be busy. And I'd borrowed a boat from somebody, and I'm sitting at the boat. I got on the boat on the water early, and I'm laying on the deck of the boat, and it was a Sunday morning. I don't like fishing on Sundays, but it was a Sunday morning. So I got my phone out, and I typed in Bible verses about remaining calm. Because I'm a pretty competitive guy, and I get jazzed up pretty good for tournament day. Like Derby day, I'm awake at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm at the boat ramp before my alarm goes off to get up, and that's how I'm wired. And so I had the boat on the water like at 4 o'clock in the morning for a 6:30 blast off. And this Bible verse came up, James 1:6, is don't be, just basically stand your ground. Don't waver around. Well, I like to fish a certain way. I like to fish shallow. If I turn my fish finder on, I'm not having a good day, right? If I got to turn my forward facing sonar on, my day is not going the way I want it to go. That's how I fish. And I had like 15 rods out on the deck. I had 4 or 5 spinner rods, 8 or 9 bait casters, and got that Bible verse. I just laid there for a minute. You know what? I said, I'm going to fish how I want to fish. And I put everything up but 3 rods. I put a jig rod. I left 2 jig rods out and a crankbait out. So in this tournament, there's not a blast off. You can get on the water any time of day, and you just can't start fishing until you get a text. So it's a lot safer. You don't have the crazy people at the blast off. And I'm at where I want to start at 4:30 in the morning. I'm there at 5:30 in the morning. I'm there at 6:15. Another boat just pulled up across from me on a bridge, and we're having a conversation. We're just talking back and forth, shooting the bull before the tournament starts. About 5 minutes before fish time, a boat pulls between us, pulls in front of me, turns around and is facing me less than a cast away. And I looked at that guy I'd been talking to, and he shrugged his shoulder. And I turned to this fella and I said, buddy, everything okay? He goes, yeah, I'm going to start fishing here. I'm like, bud, I've been here since 4:30 in the morning. He said, well, that's your problem, not mine. A lot of times that would have just spun me out, right? I'd have got upset. And I said, which way are you going? He said, I don't know. I said, well, you need to tell me because I'm going to go the other way. He said, I'm going to go down this bank. I said, all right. So I spun my boat around. Tournament, we got the text to start fishing. My second cast, I catch like a 3-pounder on a little crankbait. So my head was in the game. And I really love fishing on High Rock Lake. And so I was still a little frustrated with this guy. And long story short, there's a certain dock at a certain time of day. I can go there and catch a good fish. Just like I almost bet on it. I'm going to do it. So the time was right. The wind was right. I idle over to this dock that I love, and I fish it like crazy. I probably cast 15, 20 times under the dock. Don't get a nibble. I'm like, oh, I'm not doing any good today. Well, about that time, the clouds kind of parted. It was windy, and the sun came out, and it literally shone across the other side of the lake on the bank. Some docks that I always fish. And I'm like, well, the wind's blowing on it. Maybe the good Lord's giving me a sign. So I idle over there, and I never fished the first dock. I always fished the second, third, fourth, and fifth dock. I said, well, I'm here. I might as well fish this dock. So I skipped my jig under that dock, the very first skip underneath a ladder, underneath the walkway. I see my line jump. I was using sun line with that every 18 inches. It was green. Saw my line jump. I set the hook, and it weighed 712. I get it in the boat, and it's a one fish tournaments. So I get it in the boat, and I'm shaking. I didn't have a scale with me because I was borrowing a boat. I just had a little bit of stuff. I throw it in the box, and I call my wife, and I said, honey, I got a good one. She said, how good? I said, I don't know. I didn't bring a scale, but it's a good one. I said, I won't be embarrassed to carry it up on stage anyway. I said, I don't think it'll win, but it's a good one. So long story short, I hang up with her, and I retie real quick, and I literally go, 30 feet, and there's a boat ramp between these two docks. I flip up on there, I set the rod under my arm, and I'm popping my fingers, and I see my line tick again. I set the hook. It's like a 612. So I got a 712 and a 612 and back-to-back cast. I go down the bank, 2 docks or so, and I catch like a 511. So in just a matter of 25, 30 yards, I had 15, 16 pounds of fish. And I called one of the other guys in the tournament, and I said, hey, what creek are you in? I need to borrow your scale for a minute. So we met up, and I weighed those 3 fish, and my wife called me and goes, hey, I'm going to come out to the weigh-in. Don't weigh in until I get there. He had to weigh in between 2 and 3. So she showed up about 240 or so, and I go idling in, and I pull my boat up on the dock there at Tamarack, and there's that guy smoking a cigar beside me. And I reach in, I pull out that 5-something. I give it a kiss and toss it over the side. He said, you got one bigger? I said, yeah, I got one a little bigger. I reach in and get that 612. Take a selfie, give it a kiss, toss it over the side. He goes, you got one bigger than that? I said, yeah, I got one a little bigger. He said a little few adjectives there. And I reached in and I grabbed that big one out. And now everybody's gathered around my boat. And Brad, the tournament director, he's like, oh, he's got a big one, ladies and gentlemen. We put it in. I carried up there, and the leading fish was like 606. So I'd have had first, second, and fourth that day with my 3 fish. Weighed that fish in, had like 15 minutes to go. The longest 15 minutes of my life, I can tell you that. And these fish would come up, and I couldn't even watch anymore. I was sitting on the boat, and I put my head down, and my wife would say, oh, that's a dink. You got that one, honey. Or she said, oh, there's a big one, And long story short, I ended up winning the boat, and the rest is history. But it's pretty cool. And it was on one of my jigs. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's even better. Well, what about your favorite Bible story?
Man, there's a lot of those too, but we just celebrated Easter, so I would have to say probably just the story of the resurrection. I think it's probably the best story with love and faith and hope, and all rolled in together. And I don't know how many Easter services I've gone to in my life. I'm 55 years old. I've probably been to 45, I guess, or so. And this last Sunday, I went to 2 different services, sunrise and one before that on Saturday night. And something that I heard that I've just never really listened to before, but both pastors talked about grace and mercy. And, I think that we all have things in our lives that if we gave more grace and mercy to others, we could be more Christ-like. So, we've heard the resurrection story, that amazing story our whole life. But this year, what really grabbed me was just the story of having grace and mercy for others. So that's kind of my call this year, is to have more grace and mercy.
Cool.
So,
absolutely. All right. So what is your favorite fish to catch?
It's got to be a largemouth bass. I mean, I grew up in East Tennessee, so smallies are good. I don't get many of them here. So, if I lived up in Michigan somewhere, I'd probably have to say that the smallmouth. But here, I mean, there's just something about that big old bucket mouth I like. And if you ever get a chance to go up into Canada and do some really good salmon fishing, I mean, that's That's a pretty cool thing too. Just don't get to do it often, but I caught a 32-pound chum salmon when I was up there, and that's probably one of the most fun fish I've ever caught. But man, my juices, my engine gets rolling pretty good when I'm bass fishing.
So this is kind of along the same lines, but what about your favorite fish to fish for? To try to trick into biting.
Well, I mean, I know it's kind of a questionable thing, but man, when they're on the bed and you got that one that's finicky, you got that one that's just not really wanting to do what you want her to do, and you finally get her to do it. I know you're trying to fool something with a brain the size of a pea, but it's I guess mine's much bigger at that moment in time. But man, when you finally get that one persistent fish that just wouldn't do it for you to finally eat, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
a little moment of satisfaction.
Absolutely. All right. So, what is your favorite fish to eat?
Freshwater would have to be probably walleye, followed right behind with crappie, or crappie, I guess is the right term for me. But and then I really like flounder in saltwater. So
okay, for sure. Are you a fried fish guy, or you like it on the grill or baked, or does it matter?
I'm from East Tennessee. We fry it all. We fry Twinkies in East Tennessee, so it's got to be fried. So
let's see. What is it? It's my turn, isn't it? All right. What's your favorite fishing snack?
When I take the time and I get Ritz crackers and put peanut butter on them. When you make them at the house, to me, that's my favorite snack. I've always got beef jerky and I got some little granola bars or whatever. But when I take the time and make me some Ritz crackers and peanut butter, that's a good snack on the water.
That's the first time we've had Ritz crackers and peanut butter, but that's a solid one right there.
Yeah.
My dad and I would sit and like watch the game or something, and we'd each have a sleeve of the Ritz and we'd have a jar of peanut butter there.
I mean, it's a step up from a pack of crackers. There's no comparison for a pack of crackers making your own. It's a whole lot better. So.
Yeah, well, the difference is you get to use Jif or Skippy peanut butter and not have the whatever it is that they use. All right, so don't want you to give up too many secrets. No secret spots or GPS coordinates or anything. But what's your favorite body of water to fish?
Lake Murray, South Carolina. Me and a bunch of buddies have taken vacations there for probably 20 some years. We go down a week, and we used to do it to get away from our wives, to be honest with you, when we were younger. And then we all got to take our kids with us, and that was just a great experience. And now we only go for half a week because we don't want to be away from our families as much. But man, Lake Murray I got so many memories and just some amazing fish, and I just like it.
It's just rubbing it in, aren't they, Cam? It's rubbing it in with that Lake Murray.
You don't like Murray?
Oh, man. I've only fished it one time. It's been about maybe 2 months ago. There was a big kayak tournament there, and I didn't do really well. So, but you know how it is when it's not a body of water that you fish a lot. And I only pre-fished for 2 days. And it's a big lake to try to cover and break down in just a couple of days. So, I'm sure that it's a great lake. I'm sure that I just need more practice at it. So I'm going to take some more trips down there. But I ended up fishing around Drury Island, and there were some people that went out of there that caught some fish, and actually figured some stuff out towards the end of the tournament. So if I'd have had some more days to pre-fish, I'm sure I would have done well. It was beautiful. We had a great time camping, and had a good time despite my poor showing.
So Drury Island, that's where most of the fishing I do is within sight of Drury Island. I can see it. Like I fished the Big Bass tour on that lake in 3 weeks, and I'll be able to see the bridge basically the entire day for 3 days.
Yep.
So
yeah, I think it's a little extra. The sting is a little extra for Robert, because he knows that if he had just fished his strengths, he'd have done well the whole time he was there. But he decided to branch out and do something else.
Yeah, I'm like you. I like to stay in some little stained, dirty water, and that was where I was at. Was way too clear for what I like to do. But
one of those hindsight is 20/20 deals.
Yeah, it's all good.
Well,
It's all
I've
good.
caught 25 pounds on that bridge 2 different times, 2 different days. I've cranked that bridge for 8 hours, just gone back and forth like a parade, back and forth. But I've caught 25 pounds 2 different times on that bridge. So
Yeah,
if I'm
there's fish
struggling,
there.
I could get a little speed trap out and just beat it to death. I'll break 2 or 3 bills, but they'll eat that Crystal Cross speed trap to death right there. So
There you go. There's some Lake Murray juice for everybody.
Lake
That's
Murray juice.
Yep. All right, so let's see. I already know the answer to this because you've already said it a few times. But favorite lure to throw?
It's got to be a jig, and then but I'll tell you, mate, when they're eating a topwater bait like a buzz bait or buzz frog, man, I just love watching it happen. But if I could only have one for the rest of my life, I'd fish a jig. So
Okay. Yeah, for sure. And I had a feeling that was coming too, but you're right. You're right. There's like a buzz toad or a buzz bait that blow up is just, I love fishing a popper. That's my comfort zone on the top water. But whenever like there's something about like, cause they're chasing that buzz toad and they're exploding on it. That's one of the best top water explosions that you can get is something like a buzz toad or a buzz bait.
you guys ever fish Baden Lake?
I have not.
Yeah, I think I fished it once.
So it gets a lot of grass in it in the summertime on the edges. You'll have pockets of grass on the edge, and you can throw that buzz frog across there, and it'll go up in the air, and it'll come down, it'll spin, it'll go up and down, and you'll see the reeds start moving while you're ringing, and that's just your hair stands up on the back of your neck and your arms. You know it's coming, and when it hits that next hole, they blow it up. It's an awesome sight. So
Yeah, I'll never get over being able to see the weight coming after my bait.
yeah,
It's all I can do. It's all I can do to keep a steady pace while I see that weight coming. Because I either want to like just stop it or like I get too excited and I speed up. But yeah, it's all I can do. All right. Let's see. I think last but not least, what is your favorite time of year to fish?
yes.
Best answer yet.
Yeah, that's awesome.
January to July, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, springtime I think is everybody's probably favorite time just because the fish are doing what they do and they're easier to find. But once again, it's not always about catching for me. It's about getting outside. But it doesn't really matter if somebody wants to go in the middle of the day in August. Let's go. If you want to go in January, let's bundle up and go. Let's get out there and have some time. So
That's awesome. All right, man. Well, we are going to go ahead and start wrapping things up.
okay.
What do you have coming up next for Eric and for Higher Power Baits?
We don't have much on the schedule. We only do one show a year currently. We set up at the Raleigh Expo. We have a booth there, and pretty cool thing we do that. Like we let you build your own jig. It's BYOJ, BYOB, build your own bait. I bring all my tabs that I showed you back here, and I've got it set up. And you pick out the heads you want. You pick out 3 tabs, and we tie it up for you while you wait. So you can kind of Frankenstein your own bait while you're there. And we've done that for the last 5 years. Had our own booth, and we're growing. We actually just called and got a bigger booth. I'll have a 20-foot booth this next year. We've got into apparel and some hats and things now. People have been asking, so really growing there. So next January, come out to the Raleigh Expo, but. We're also open to speaking at churches and wild game dinners. If you got an event going on in your area and you want somebody to talk a little bit about fishing and faith, we definitely love to do that and kind of share what we do and why we do it. So,
Heck yeah.
For sure. And go ahead and shout out your socials, website, anything like that. How do people find you? How do people order a 3-pack of what is it? Need one, feed one, seed one?
yes, sir. So we're not real fancy. We don't have a website or anything yet. We just have a Facebook page, Higher Power Baits. We have an album on there with a lot of our more popular patterns. But the cool thing, and what most people do is they kind of tell me what they want. Hey, I want a jig with some red and some green and some blue, and I'll tie one up and send them a picture. And they say, that's what I want. And we kind of custom make them for there. So I don't have thousands of jigs tied up. I've probably got 200 or 300 tied up, but most of what we do are kind of custom. And so they just sent us a note on Facebook through Messenger, kind of like how you guys reached out to me and just said, hey, I'd like to get some jigs. What do I do? And we start the conversation. And then I've got people that have ordered from us 6 or 7 years, and I know when he calls up. I've got one buddy named Jeremy from up your all's area, and he'll say, "Man, I need the juice. I know what the juice is." I tie him up some juice, and he's won a lot of money on that Maven Lake on the juice. So that's what we are. Higher Power Baits on Facebook. Look us up. Give us a like and follow. We try to post something every couple of days or so. Sometimes they're fishing related, sometimes they're inspiration, sometimes they're both, and just trying to grow a little bit every day.
For sure. And I wanted to give you an open floor to shout out any sponsor supporters. Anybody you want to say thank you to, the floor is yours.
I appreciate that. So, first of all, I got to thank Bass Pro Shop. They allow me, they know what I do on the side. I sell, fishing lures and things for a living, but they allow me to do this on the side because of my ministry. So to Johnny and everybody at Bass Pro Shop, I think that's awesome. True Timber Camo, they help me with my jerseys, and they help me work. They've give me some really good deals on the shirts and things that we sell at our event. Cash and Rods, I've been working with those folks out of your all's area up that way for a long time with Matt and his team up there. I fish mainly Cash and Rods. Big Bass Tour and the Big Bass Bash are some of those tournament trails I was telling you about. Big Bass Bash is up your all's way. Brad Staley's from up in Greensboro. And he's actually got a tournament on High Rock on the 20th and 21st, and it's for a boat. One fish on High Rock Lake wins you a boat then. And then my best friend's he's a lure maker. He makes all my crankbaits for me. I provide him with jigs. He provides me with crankbaits, but Tufts Hogs, and you can look them up on Facebook too. But they make his wife, she's not talented at all. This guy, he could lose a jig in a coffee cup, but his wife is super talented. She paints some good looking baits. So look up Huff's Hogs and check them out.
Okay, for sure.
And
all right, man.
We didn't even go down the Cash and Rods rabbit hole, so that just means we'll have to have you on another time. We both like cashing. We both fished a lot of their rods, so that's a whole nother topic.
Good people, great rods. So yeah,
Matt's a good dude.
Yeah, I was just in there Monday. They let they kind of put on a show building a rod for Henry. So that was pretty cool of them. They didn't have to let a 3-year-old back there to see what they were doing, but it was pretty awesome that they did that.
Yeah, it's cool.
Good deal.
All right, man. Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show. Like Robert said, we're going to have you back on. But yeah, we're excited for what you're doing, and keep up the good work, brother.
Heck yeah.
Thank you very much. Once again, thank you for having me on. It was an honor. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
All right. So, Robert, what'd you think?
Oh yeah, that was good. I'm sure he's got a ton of stories. Just you can imagine running a Bass Pro and the people that are coming in and the events that he's gone to, being over the whole store. I'm sure there are trips every year. I'm sure that's probably what he was talking about seeing Johnny Morris fly fishing. That's probably one of their end of the year trips. Or if you hit a certain goal, you're going, we used to do those in the restaurant business. So right. I'm sure some of those trips are off the hook. So I'd like to hear his stories. And I'd also like to hear kind of what he talks about, when he does his speaking stuff. So yeah, I think that'd be interesting. It's a very intriguing guest on a lot of different levels. So I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, you want to go ahead and close this out in prayer? I don't remember who did it last time.
Yeah, that's good. I got you. Sounds good. Dear Lord in heaven, thank you for this day. Thank you for allowing us to celebrate this past week. For what you did for us and dying on the cross, and then your resurrection allows us to be forgiven of our sins. Please let us, not only celebrate and remember that during the Easter week, but year round. And please keep that a top of mind awareness. Please watch over everybody who's on the water this week or whenever they're listening. please keep them safe and let them return to their families. And we just ask that you watch over us and keep us in a good headspace so that we can say and act in a way that brings people closer to you. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode. Y'all take care and God bless.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the Faith and Fishing podcast. Please consider supporting those that support us. Jade's Jigs lead-free finesse tackle. Use promo code FNF10 at jadesjigs.com for 10% off. Save your outdoors. Stop losing your gear. Use promo code FNFP15. SaveYourOutdoors.com for 15% off. Omnia Fishing. Check out Premium, Premium Pro, and their Ambassador program. Use promo code FNF10 for 10% off at OmniaFishing.com. And if it's your first order, use promo code FNF15 for 15% instead. Mr. B Lure Company. High-quality handmade baits made right here in the U.S. MrBLureCompany.com. Use promo code faithnfishn pod for 15% off your first purchase. Get outdoors, pedal, and paddle. Check them out at the shop in Greensboro, North Carolina, or at shopgetoutdoors.com for all your paddling and cycling needs. And Nocqua Adventure Gear, lighting, power, and all the connectors at Nocqua.com. Please rate, review, subscribe on whatever app you're listening on. That's going to do it for this episode. Y'all take care and God bless.